Hi, this is Gayle with BERNINA of Naperville, and welcome to our April session of the Kimberbell Digital Dealer Exclusives for 2025, which is our mystery quilt. Now, there's been a lot of buzz about this quilt, particularly our phone lines, because where's the fabric? Where's the fabric? When's it coming? Well, we finally got our last few bolts, and Chris and I furiously worked in the classroom, cutting, folding, and kitting. And, I wish I would have gotten a picture of this or a video or whatever, but the van was loaded up with all of your kits. So we were able to fulfill everybody's kit. We even have a few extras left. So if you order today, you may just get yours straight away. We do have a little bit more fabric on order to have some backstock for this, but eventually you will also be able to order more fabric of some of your favorites that you see in this kit. So with that said, all right, so what are we making this month? It's been a mystery, right? Well, of course, we're going to be making 2 blocks with a cute little bee on it. And the really cool thing this month is that the wings are done separately so that they are 3D, and I can almost just see them like fluttering, you know what I mean? But we have a little extra bonus project for you, and it's a little pincushion. And so I embroidered a third bee on velvet to make this cute little thing. And this is something I've just had around the house for a long time. It's this little acorn, but when you put the acorn bit on top, it's still kind of cute. So maybe you have something like this lying around and you would like to give it a try. But let's have a look at the presentation deck that you're going to get this month from me if you're already signed up for our program. If you're not, well, you're going to get a lot of these from us because we make a presentation deck that's interactive with extra links and all kinds of stuff every month of this program. And it really started in December with that promotional block. So let's go over to the computer and see what's happening.
Let's start out with just a little bit of housekeeping. So we are in April of our Kimberbell Mystery Quilt Dealer Digital Exclusives for 2025. Now, you are watching this video probably on YouTube and you might have just stumbled upon it, don't know how you got here, but if you sign up for our program at BERNINAofNaperville.com, we will actually be sending you this presentation deck that you're looking through, which includes a link to this video that you're watching. Now, we've had some previous lessons starting in December with our promo block. That was the ladybug. January, we did a wallflower block. February was the mushroom and snail. Last month, we did another wallflower block. And this month, well, we're all abuzz over our cute little bee. So now, this is some very exciting news for some of you. We now have kits in stock. So if you're interested in sewing along with us and starting this journey, it doesn't take long to catch up, and you can click in the description of the video to purchase the kit. There's a fabric list. I do want to let you know that we don't include the backing for the fabric, so you're going to add the batting, stabilizer, thread, backing, and love to this project. Now, but you are in the kit going to get the embellishments and the super cute clear vinyl bag. So we don't include the stabilizers every month, but we do have an option for you. If you click this buy now button, you can buy the stabilizer bundle. And these are a starter kit for you that have all of the stabilizers that we're going to be using throughout the year. And remember, our last lesson is December of 2025. You know what? Forget this boring presentation deck. Let's just go over to our design table. Well, here are the supplies that are going to create a lot of buzz this month. So this is a really fun one that I think you're going to enjoy a lot. We're using just 3 colors. We have our charcoal, which is 4174. We have the yellow, which is 0310. And we have the white, which is 0101. Then we have the 3 fabrics. This is going to be the bee body. This is also part of the bee body, and this is the background. This is my fusible backing that we're going to put on the back of the background only. The little bee bits do not get any fusible backing. So we have two hoopings this month. There's going to be a hooping of water soluble stabilizer. That's what this is here. And that's what the bee wings are going to be made of. Now, this technique is really an old technique. I know sometimes we think of these three-dimensional things that Kimberbell does as, just their cute little things. And it is their cute little things. But this technique goes back way, way, way long ago to a technique called stump work. So let's take a little deep dive about what stump work is. The term stump work is used to describe a style of raised embroidery which was popular in England between 1650 and 1700. Before this period, the use of such raised embroidery techniques was mostly confined to ecclesiastical garments. But the guru of hand stump work is Kay Dennis, and I have had a ton of her books through the years. And, this is mostly a handwork technique when you really get down to it. And, I don't like handwork very much, but nonetheless, I totally appreciate what she does. I also want to kind of point out that some of the stump work techniques are not completely possible to do by machine. So I have some extra videos because we teach a technique called stump work in our Time for Nine Bernina embroidery software classes. So I'm just giving you a little snippet out of some of that curriculum. Now, the way stump work is done on a machine with these wings or the flower petal that you see there on the right is that there's wire that's inserted to form the petals, to shape wings, to do things like that. Now, we're not going to do that with this. These bee wings do not need any wire in them the way that this is designed, but I just thought that this would be a nice little touch if you wanted to just kind of delve into what this stuff really is. And then while we're talking about this, I can't go further on without talking about how you're going to get your Kimberbell designs. And I know sometimes this seems like a little bit of a convoluted system, but this is the way it is. You buy this program from us, you're getting the kit, you're getting, the embellishments, you're getting our videos, but the files come direct from Kimberbell, the B files, the things like that. And when you sign up at BERNINA of Naperville, we are actually sending an email to Kimberbell to order files for you that they put on your account. So I put a little video together about how to get your files. So go ahead and give this a watch if you have not done any of this before. Some of you that have been doing Kimberbell for a long time, you know the drill. Also, the designs, in addition to the wings, which you see up here, and we're going to call that hooping 1, there's also a bee, which is part of hooping 2. I'm going to take you through this step by step, but basically in hooping 1, I'm going to be hooping up a layer of stabilizer, water soluble, and then I'm just duplicating my little wings there so I can stitch 2 at a time. Then when you do hooping 2, that's when, if you're doing the block by block quilting and things like that, that's when we hoop up our poly mesh. We pick a quilting design. This is the one that Kimberbell has provided you. But we're giving you kind of some free designs this month. And what I'm doing is I have combined the Kimberbell 2 quilting files, but I took out the quilting stitches because I'm going to show you how to bring in your quilting stitches in there to do a little stipple. And so I'm just giving you the design blank, so it'll be easy for you to just add those stitches at the end. But I'm also going to give you a placement guide for a pincushion that is a little bonus project, the one you saw me show in the intro. So with that said, let's go back to the design table. So I'm going to have you cut your background fabric a little bit different and your project batting a little bit different. Once you've completed your cutting, we're going to put our background with the fusible backing attached, the project batting, and see, notice how I cut it longer. This month, this is 6.5 inches by 14 inches. That's just because it seems ridiculous since we're doing this all in one hooping to actually separate them. So I changed the cutting instructions just a little bit, but we still have the 2 by 2.5 inch pieces for the bee body, and we actually need 4 of these because it's 2 pieces of this per bee, and then we need 2 little yellow pieces. But let's hold this aside with our lightweight mesh cutaway for our second hooping. And our first hooping is going to require that we hoop one layer of our wash away mesh. And in this case, it's aqua mesh if you're using the OESD products, and it's the wash away stabilizer if you're using Kimberbell. Now, we're using the Cream 101 to do all of our wing portion from, and I'm just going to have a bobbin wound of this to do the wings. There's also an embellishment kit that you get for April, and it includes the Mylar and you know what, the biggest challenge here is opening the bag. So in this package, you get a piece of netting and a piece of Mylar.
So I sent my design over to my machine and it lands in my personal folder, and there are the wings. And I mentioned that you could use the small medium clamp hoop. So we're going to select that. And then we're going to simply make a copy because we want to do 2 sets of wings. And that's duplicate under the edit menu. And now there are our 2 sets of wings, and they can be a little bit close together like that. We just don't want them sewing on top of each other. And when we send this to the machine, we want to make sure that our quilt settings are off, that thread away is off, but it is okay to cut on the jump stitches. And I'm not going to use a basting stitch. I'm going to use my stabilizer tape.
Before we get started with the stitching, there is an important button that we're going to need to press, and that is reduce thread changes. This is going to combine the tack down stitch, the fill stitch, the outlining stitch, or whatever, so that we don't have to cut, then sew, then cut, then sew. It's just going to make it more efficient for us.
So now that we have our wing outline, we can place our netting down, covering it just like that. I know it's really hard to see. Then we're going to place our Mylar, making sure that we cover our wings. Then we're going to place the netting or tulle back over, and I'm going to tape this into place. Before we move on with the next color, we're going to take off the tape, and then we're going to trim our Mylar and netting really close to the wing netting stitching. Now, the Mylar would tear very easily, but the netting doesn't. So this might take you just a little bit. And don't forget, you can take your hoop off your machine to do this, but you can't take your work out of the hoop to do this. And you just want to be careful not to cut through the stabilizer. I almost did right there, so just be careful. All right, so now it's our satin stitching now.
So with our wings, we're just going to carefully use our scissors, the same ones that I used to trim the work away, and you're just going to trim really close around the edge of this. In fact, you don't have to get too close because the stuff is wash away, right? So I just want to kind of get in here so I don't have so much water soluble stabilizer to dissolve. And then while this is having its bath and drying, we're going to make the rest of our blocks. So let's go give this a bath, shall we? And let it dry. Now, let's do the other hooping. And then we're sending our design over to our machine, and you can see that this is completely blank, and that's completely fine. So now what I want to do is go over to my sewing side. And I want to go into one of my multi-direction folders, and it's folder number 1601, and I want stitch 1660, and I want to select it 4 times. Now, no problem, I go back to my embroidery side, add that design. It's going to be in my personal folder right down there. And now I'm going to move this over to the side like this. And now I'm going to duplicate it. And I'm going to bring this one over and line that up just so. And now I'm going to duplicate again. And if you need to use your knobs to kind of move things around a little bit, and if you wanted, you can select all, use your alignment tools, and align to the top. And now we could also take our whole unit then and center it, more easily there or whatever, or we can select only, this is select one. See how I'm just selecting one here? This is select all, and this is select some. So I don't want my base design there to be selected, so I've just selected some there, and now I can kind of align this and center this over my pieces there. Now we want to bring in the bee. And I did that by using my wireless transfer on my 990. So now I want to select one item, and I want that one item to be my bee. And I'm going to use my knob to center this. Now I could do all sorts of things with rearranging my layers and all of these things, but I am simply going to try to eyeball this. That. Now, just like I've been doing other things, I'm going to make a duplicate. Now, one thing I want to do is select one of my stipple stitches there, and then I'm going to go to select some, and I want to group these together. And now what I want to do is select all, go back to align, and just center all of these designs in the vertical, which is, well, I guess they're saying it's center horizontal. I would thought that was center vertical, but whatever. There we go. So now the bees should be in the middle and everything should be in the middle now. Whether they're aligned with the top and bottom, that remains to be seen. But at least this way, I can kind of look at them and see if they're in the middle. And I'm looking to see if the bee is in the middle of that square. So I'm just going to move it up just a wee bit. I think it looks good. Okay, so now I'm ready to stitch this out. And I'm actually going to be using my maxi hoop hooped up with the light mesh cutaway stabilizer.
Once again, we want quilt settings off. We want thread away off. It's okay to cut on the jump stitch. And if you're daring enough, we can do everything separated again, everything kind of combined together. So reduce thread changes and okay. And now let's look through all of the different colors. So the first color is going to be the placement line to put down my project batting. Then I've got another color that's going to stitch down the project batting, and then we're going to trim. Then we're going to place our fabric on this placement line, and then the green is going to stitch the fabric down. Then we're going to quilt with our special quilting stitch that we brought in from our sewing side. And then we will go through the steps to create the bee. And we'll be doing those steps on the top bee, the bottom bee, each one. And as we get to that piece where we're going to attach the wings, we're going to have to be very careful there and pay attention.
Now we're going to begin to do the stitching for our quilting. And this is going to be really very similar to any of the Kimberbell stuff because they do the quilting under the embroidered work. And so when we did our mushrooms, remember I provided you with the file that the stipple went around the mushroom, but this time we're just using our built-in quilting designs to kind of assist us in this. And of course, there's nothing wrong with using Kimberbell's quilting designs that come with the digital downloads monthly, right? I'm just kind of giving you some other ways that you can use your top of the line machines. Now it's time to stitch our abdomen place line. And so that's just going to be a straight stitch around the shape. And then we have two of our black 2 by 2.5 inch rectangles that we've cut. And we're going to place these and secure them down with our placement tape. And this one I'm going to tape at the top so we don't get our foot stuck under. And now we're going to remove our tape and trim all of the black areas around here, all of our excess black fabric, right up to the stitching line without trimming the stitching line, of course. All right, let's take a moment and back up the bus a little bit. I got confused because this is a situation where I didn't change the thread colors to remind me the thread sequencing, but this color, color number 9, I stitched it in yellow, but it is supposed to be black. And so I'm just going to overstitch here. We'll still see a little bit of yellow peeking through, but I'm not too worried about that. But I wanted to draw this to your attention that it's important that you stitch color number 9 in black because this is the portion that matches the little black part of the bee's butt here. So now instead of this looking black, it looks a little bit green. But you know what? All bees are unique, right? Aren't they like snowflakes? No two bees are the same. Maybe that one got frosted tips like, Justin Timberlake in the 90s. Were frosted tips popular in the 90s or was it the early 2000s? I'm going to have to do a little bit of research on that. All right. So now that this is out of the way, our next phase is to actually stitch our placement line for the yellow stripe. So indeed, it is now safe to switch our thread to yellow. So now I'm going to place my yellow stripe fabric over that area. And now we're going to remove the tape and trim the excess fabric away. And remember, you can remove the hoop from the machine, just not the work from the hoop to do this. That's why I love these perfect scissors because I can really get in there and, trim closely because they're serrated and curved. Now it's safe to embroider with the yellow thread again. Now it's time to do another placement stitch, and this time it's back with the charcoal thread. And then it's time to place our final little black piece down, covering that placement line. And of course, we do this to both bees. And now let's trim our final applique piece in this project. It's coming together. So we're going to stitch that outline. That's the decorative outline in our charcoal. And then we're going to keep charcoal in when we stitch the wings down. And our wings are just about dry. Woo, we're almost there. So now we're going to stitch a placement line so that we know where to put our wings. And so we're going to place our wings into position. The wider piece goes to the top like this. And I'm going to do 2 pieces of tape per side. Just trying to get everything centered and pretty. Just want to get everything secure. Okay. Okay, there's that one. We've got another one down here. Make sure it's right side up. And if we look at this, you can kind of see that this is the back side. I mean, they both look pretty good, right? But there's a clear, better looking side. I'm going to also reduce the speed just a little bit because I'm a little nervous about this. Now you might just want to keep an eye out that that foot stays over that second wing when it travels down there, and be ready to have your hands on your stop start button. Perfect. All right, so we're going to remove this tape. We're going to take this over to our design table and we're going to trim it down. So here is our bees, and they are really super cute. So we're going to take them out of the hoop and then we're going to trim them. And we're going to trim these up to 4.5 inches. So the best thing to do is to turn this over. And there's 100 different ways to trim this. You can certainly trim these with the orange pop rulers, which is Kimberbell's recommended way to trim these up. But I just, I don't know, call me old school, call me an old curmudgeon or whatever, but I'm just as happy trimming mine from the back on those stitching lines for when we stitch the fabric down. Those are actually our cutting lines, and I just do things that way. Okay, so can we talk a little bit about if you are looking for a fun project and you want to do something super cool, but you're not quite ready to make this quilt, or you stumbled upon this video and now you want to start, but you want to practice? I don't know. I'm going to make some wings, and I'm going to make another bee on some black velvet. And we're going to turn it into a pincushion. Okay, so I'm going to be stitching on velvet, and I don't know if you can pick this up or not, but velvet has pile. It's fluffy. And what happens is this side to me looks lighter than this side. And that is simply because they're going in opposite directions. The selvage edge is down here in this regard, and the selvage edge is up here. For this project, it doesn't really matter how it's cut, but I just kind of wanted to point that out to you. Another thing about velvet is if we hoop up the velvet in a hoop, we could get hoop burn on it because it squeezes this shiny stuff and it just will always just show up there no matter. So we're going to float it, and floating is basically what we do with a lot of the Kimberbell stuff anyway. So I've designed my bee with a 6-inch circle around it because I'm going to make a pincushion out of this artichoke that's got a top on it, and I'll show you. But this is an old candle holder that's got like a little dome on it, and I'm going to put my pincushion kind of domed up on this thing. So I'm going to do a little bit larger circle than I need. So we're going to use our our small clamp hoop. So let's go over to the machine and stitch this out. It's just following the Kimberbell instructions that you already saw. So this is the design I've created. Of course, I'll give you these circles that you can plop your little bee into, just like the backgrounds that I did. But what's going to happen is our bee is going to stitch out. Then this big circle is going to stitch out. Then you're going to take it out of the hoop. You're going to hoop up another poly mesh stabilizer, and then you're going to stitch the smaller circle. But first, we've got to stitch the B. So we'll say okay to this. No quilt settings, no thread away, thread cutting on jump stitches, multicolor is fine. So we don't do any quilting or anything like that on this. So we're going to start right with our basting. And with basting, we're going to do a thread up command. So that means we're going to grab that top thread and then pull the bottom thread up with our tweezers. And now we're stitching the basting line. And that's going to hold our velvet into position so it doesn't pucker up or anything like that. Now, another thing with velvet that's important is because it has pile, you probably want a topper. So let's use some stitch 2-0 right on top of this. Now, did I say stitch 2-0? I meant heat to go. Now, we could use either one on here. This velvet that I have is totally washable. It's not anything precious. But sometimes you might be embroidering on something that you just simply can't get wet because getting something wet changes the pile of the velvet and then it's icky. It's not fluffy, it's not soft anymore. So this product is heat to go, and heat to go you place just like you would your Stitch 2-0 or your other water-soluble toppers, but this one irons off. So let's go ahead and rethread with our black thread, and we're going to just stitch our B down. And a cool thing about this as well is we won't have to iron off all of this heat to go. We're going to be left with a very little bit to actually have to press. So after you stitch the first go of your bee bits, like the legs and the antenna, then you can peel your heat to go off because otherwise it's going to be like really challenging to get the rest of that off. So now it's time to add those applique bits. So we're going to stitch a placement line for the bottom of the bee. And then we're just following all of the steps that we would take that we made for our Kimberbell quilt block. Now, this next color is a cutting line. So it's just going to make a circle for us. And this is part of the design that I give you. So this is the 6-inch circle. And once the 6-inch circle has stitched out, we're going to hoop another layer of, we're going to remove this from the hoop. We're going to hoop another thing of poly mesh stabilizer. And then we're going to baste that other piece of velvet into the hoop, and we're going to stitch the smaller circle, which is 4.5 inches. So now all I want to do, to see how this is the size of my base here roughly. So all I want to do now is find the centers of the pincushion, and we're going to pin, make sure we're lining everything up nicely because we're going to be distributing our gathers. Okay, so I'm going to just do a little gathering stitch around the edge of my circle. So I stitched that in white so that you could see what that looks like. So now we're going to align our pin marks just so we can distribute the bulk. And now we're going to pull our gathering stitches, and we can use tweezers for that. And we're just going to pull up. This is the bobbin thread that I'm pulling here. And this was a 6 millimeter long stitch on our machine. I didn't use the basting function. I just made it 6 millimeters long. These don't have to be the best gathers in the world either, because it's going to ultimately be on the bottom. So we're not going to see. So don't fret if you feel like your gathers aren't perfect. I'm not worried about it. And I just go quadrant at a time, pulling my piece up to be gathered. Need more pins though. Okay, so now I'm going to take this over to the machine and stitch again, all the way around, because we're going to just cut a little hole to turn this inside out. So now I stitched and I'm just going to cut a little slice in the bottom of this like that to turn this inside out. And then any basting stitches that you see, we can just pull out. And we're going to stuff it. And then we have a little pincushion in there. Okay, so here's a little pincushion. I think it looks pretty cute. I added a bunch of trims with my handy dandy hot glue here. And these are just trims. Don't be looking for these. These are just things that I have collected in my sewing career. I'm sure you have similar items that you can use. I called this an artichoke earlier, but I actually think it's an acorn. So I wanted to show you how my trims still work, but then when we expose our fancy pincushion.
All right. Well, what do you think? It was pretty fun, right? Now, I have to tell you, that pin cushion was, it's a little bit over the top, right? But I'm just happy making our two cute little designs. So I hope that you are enjoying this program. I hope that you're excited as I am, that you're getting your fabric soon. And I really hope that you will continue watching along with us. And if you want to see other videos and tutorials and other things that we've done, don't forget to check out our BERNINA of Naperville YouTube channel. It's easy. It's youtube.com/BERNINA of Naperville, and there you can like, comment, and subscribe. Happy embroidery.